Hi there, folks. I wanted to do a little experiment, partly due to the fact that I realized that I have 78 subscribers, which isn't that much, but it seemed appropriate for a channel about this particular topic. And also just because for some reason I keep watching videos and the Celtic cross keeps coming up, and I keep thinking, you know, for many of us, that's a pretty controversial spread. I remember using it once or twice, sort of, I remember using it a few times, but I didn't really ever get that deep into it because immediately after learning or starting to learn how to read, it became clear from most of the experts that I was reading about that nobody really used it, or people didn't like it, or that it wasn't ideal for beginners. And then I never went back to it over time because I just found more appropriate ways to do it. But I thought, let's experiment, why not experiment and see whether it's any good for me now, 17 years later-ish. Could I get anything out of it? And I've been in a little bit of a funk this summer. I feel it starting to emerge, but I thought, let's try it out. I don't usually read for myself on video, but and I may not even post this. Who knows? It could be totally useless. But I pulled out my good old PKT by A.E. Dubs to look at the original, original in quotation marks, the version he wrote out. So I'm going to work with that sort of in my way. And I'm using the Fountain Tarot, which, like many decks, includes the Celtic Cross in its book. I didn't suitably gush about this deck when I did my video with it the other day, because I had been working with it a little bit and had just gotten the Prisma Visions deck, and had looked at that just for the first, and was just sort of like blown away by that. But I did mention that they're beautiful decks, and this one's sort of the antithesis of that. Anyway, beautiful, amazing artwork in this deck, and I'm having fun getting to know it. As I was shuffling, I got two cards that sort of fell out of the deck in exactly this position, which seemed appropriate. So I decided to let this be my card 1 and card 2. So according to Mr. Waite, that would be the first card is he would use a significator. And interestingly, I got the Knight of Cups, which would technically be a significator. I don't really think about myself as the Knight of Cups, but I guess I have that quality in some ways, covered by the Nine of Wands. And I just decided I don't use significators anyway, but let's go with it. So this will be, it really should go like this in its way, but I figured let's just start with that. So then I'll draw the rest, and we'll see what happens. So I'm referencing the book here as I go, because I literally don't remember all the sections. So the second card we have, that's the cross, that's the challenge or obstacles. The third card goes above and represents our aim in the matter, or the best that can be achieved under the circumstances, but which has not yet been made actual. This is where we start to get into like the craziness of the Celtic Cross spread. So I'm going to say, yes, this is the crown, but I'm going to say this is kind of the spiritual influence. Let's sort of, I'm just improvising. So the spiritual influence right now is going to be the Five of Wands. And then we'll pick the fourth card. The fourth card is beneath him. It's shoes, as what it says, the foundation or base. I'm going to say if this is the spiritual influence, then I'm going to have this be the gut influence, or the ground, the real life, corporal, what's the word I'm looking for? If this is spirit, this will be earth. This is like the basic, the real life influence right now. I'm having a hard time saying that because I'm improvising it, but that will be the Three of Cups. All right. So we've got our first 4 cards. Then we go to card 5, and it goes This is behind him. So this is what has just passed, all right? So let's say card 5 is the Magician. I'm actually seeing some interesting stuff here. The 6th card is what's in front of us. This is influences that are coming into action. All right, so we get the Hierophant. All right, so that's our cross, and then we do the staff. Card 7 represents himself, the significator, position or attitude in the circumstances. So this is a card that's going to represent sort of a general attitude right now. All right. 10 of Cups, really interesting. Card 8, the environment. This one I've actually always really liked. Let's go over here and say that it's this. We get the Ace of Wands. Card 9, hopes or fears. Hopes and fears. Again, always a really interesting one. And then, that's the moon. And then the 10th card is the culmination of influences. So let's see. The culmination of influences in this reading will be death. Just what you want to see at the end of a reading. All right. So let me go in here. Let's start with the very beginning. Let's start with our representation of me and my challenges right now. I would say if I were reading, I'm going to do this as if I were reading for someone else because I find that a lot easier. So because the significator picked itself, I'll say that the primary state of this person right now is one who is a hunter. It's someone who's very emotionally aware, but is sort of distracted by emotion. Is given to focusing primarily on feeling. Someone who's focusing primarily on potentially instant gratification in general. That sense of wanting to feel good all the time, which is not necessarily an inappropriate, description of my state right now. It does indicate, interestingly, that it's a positive thing, the Knight. It's just a stage in development, but it's crossed by the 9 of Wands, which to me indicates a struggle, a feeling of potentially being exhausted by the journey, exhausted by the battle, in a way. In this particular deck, they call it the final push. It's interesting, too. I always am curious when Cups and Wands appear so close together, because there is a little bit of conflict with fire and water. I would say, if I were reading for someone, that this combination indicates that the Cups energy, the sort of romantic side of someone, is really being squelched in a way by the reality of having to do work in order to survive, and that doesn't feel good all the time, and that work is work, but that in order to get through life, you've got to make that push. You've got to do the work. It's not fun. It hurts. It leaves you bruised, but that's just the reality. So the impulse is to really want to be focused on the sort of romantic pursuit of ideals, but the real life is getting in the way, and that is not all that odd to me. So then we move on to card 3, which is the 5 of Wands. And this is interesting, too, because we get sort of a direct correlation. These cards are always very similar to me. In the Five of Wands, the spiritual influence is the struggle of getting work done, is the conflict of fighting to find your place in the world, in your community, of getting your vocation uh out, not your vocation, getting it out there, but getting the work done, you know, of sitting down and doing the work that needs to get done. The inner conflict, the outer conflict, feelings of jealousy, feelings of exhaustion, feelings of you know, constantly having to defend yourself against other people who are doing the same thing. Um, and you know, that can be damaging to the spirit, it can be damaging to the psyche. So the spiritual influence comes right out of this. There's also a relationship here between the romantic instinct, the desire to sort of be you know, a romantic hero in a way. And I'm not using the word romantic in the sense of love, but in the more kind of poetic sense of, you know, wanting life to be lovely, wanting to, you know, sit under a tree and write poetry, for example. Um, the realities are that work needs to get done, and that is really causing some spiritual discord. But underneath that, the sort of gut instinct, the influence that's strongly working in life right now, in real life, in relationships, in you know, sort of day-to-day experience, is community. So, despite all of this, there's a community of people who are supporting, even though it feels like the community causes conflict, the community is really there to support. And we have this really lovely, interesting relationship of cups, cups, wands, wands. And so there's a fire and water influence, and that's inevitably going to cause trouble because water wants to put out fire, and in this case, like, the fire is necessary. So I think what I would say in this case is that conflict is coming because the fire and water influences are fighting each other, rather than using fire to make steam to push a motor. Water can put out the fire. But they can work together. So I think that that's interesting. I hope I'm making sense. This is, you know, a little bit more rambly than I would normally do, because generally when I do a reading, I like to prepare and look through it. But I thought, hey, let's experiment. So water and cups, really interesting. I mean, water and fire, really interesting. They need to work together, but there's some potential for goodness, but it's causing conflict because the two elements are fighting each other rather than being put to use. So community could, at the base of this tree, in fact, also be a key to solving conflict. It could be a way to get around conflict. It could be a way to get around the spiritual discord here. I'm going to pause here because it's almost 15 minutes, and I'm going to move into part 2.